Hi, there's Kevin with the Rogue Deck Builder here with this week's episode of the Market Mondays. So we have a juicy one for this week. I'm going to navigate into the dreaded waters of speculation versus investing and why I think one of them is healthy for the game and one of them is, in fact, parasitical. And maybe all the hate that the MTG finance community has had in recent years isn't that unjustified. So we're also going to talk about the $1,400 that's going to be coming in for the stimulus checks and how that is going to lead to even more speculating, even more Dutch tulip type speculating, and the FOMO is going to be real. And I expect there won't be a rotated booster box. I'm even thinking that things like Theros Beyond Death and Throne of Eldraine, which are still in standard print, are going to be targeted, which is just insanity levels of going after a product that has things like collector's editions and just the overprinting of those particular sets. And eventually, there has to be some sort of end game for these people that are speculating. And this, what I am going to predict is we're going to have a similar scenario to things like Pogs, things like Beanie Babies, things like the Dutch Tulip, things like old Yu-Gi-Oh! In the past, things like Pokemon and Magic have actually experienced in the past, and the market is going to have some correction to people that are actually wanting to buy Magic the Gathering and other people that are sitting on it and eventually wanting to sell the product. And there will be a slapback in the market, and I think the prices will come down eventually. Now, there are a few other factors that could cause this from not happening. One is the big elephant in the room, which is hyperinflation. It does look like we are under hyperinflation when you look at all the other indicators in the United States economy, well, really the world economy. The currency was just overprinted as a rule of thumb through the pandemic. We have things like anywhere from cleaning supplies to real estate to even food now is starting to go up at high prices. And I think that has more to do with hyperinflation than anything. That's what happens when you print trillions of dollars rather than actually budget for them for the stimulus checks and whatnot. Where the taxation is coming from or where that money is being recouped is through the form of inflation or the devaluation of the currency. So I don't think Magic is any exception to that. I think that's the main reason that we've had such runaway speculation in Magic the Gathering is because of excess money. So when people have, first of all, a lot of people are out of work but still being paid, or their expenses are being not having the expenses they once did have, so they have a lot more free capital. And we are still experiencing the coming of age for a lot of people that grew up with Magic that now do have money, and that's played a huge role in Pokemon. But really, the just the factor of the sheer boredom of the pandemic with the increased amount of capital out there has just led to the hobby industry going nuts with the especially the sealed box prices. I would even couple the fact into the equation here that it is now the new trend to be a investor, to be we saw it with like the stock market, with the kind of the armchair speculators getting into that, as well as other hobby industries. Just everyone seems to think they are experts on investing, and we've seen these sort of these scenarios play out, and they've never ended well in the history of mankind when everyone is speculating. So you need your worker bees, you need your consumers, and you do need your investors and to some extent the speculators. But when everybody is trying to be one thing, of course, that's going to cause an imbalance in the system, and eventually the system is going to have to correct itself. That was one of the major factors of some of the market crashes in the past. So with that being said, though, there are some saving graces for Magic the Gathering sealed boxes. What I'm really talking about is the recent ones, things like Amonkhet, now things like Core Set 2020, that have no business being worth as much as they're being worth now because they're A, not rare, and B, not old. Something has to be wrong when you look at Amonkhet and you see Amonkhet going for $240 a booster box, and then you go back to something that is truly old, like the Conspiracy Take the Crown 1, and then try to make the comparison that this thing was a lot more rare, has a lot more sought after cards in it, and wasn't a standard set that just got completely overprinted. That was still during the height where Amonkhet was on the backs of Kaladesh. And speaking of Kaladesh, that's a very expensive set at this point. And there's just a lot that the EV of these particular sets also don't justify the booster box price. And something's got to give eventually for these particular sets. I think that it was about time. In fact, I've talked about it in other Market Mondays that Things like Return to Ravnica looked like they're in prime position to be going up because they'd been stagnant for so many years, and finally it seems like they're old enough that these type of sets will, have that nostalgic value of people wanting to purchase them and actually crack them, and they'll start to slightly go up. But that's the key term, and I think that's where we'll make the distinction right now between what an investor is and what a speculator is. So in investing, you want to see these type of gains when you actually look up in like the EV of Return to Ravnica. You see these 1%, 2% short, like it's over time, over a long period of time, the supply starts to dwindle. The demand maybe remains the same, or at least or even lower, but it's still stripping at that supply. And eventually those investments start to make their money back, and that's where you make your profit. And those are these what I like to call hard work investments. It's not easy money. It takes time, it takes patience, but it's kind of the tried, tested, and true way of healthy markets, how they operate. This has kind of been my bread and butter for years with Magic the Gathering. I've never really liked the quick buck. I used to do it with things that I don't really consider to be speculating, because it's taking a supply that doesn't have a demand and then increasing a huge demand all at once. So what I'm talking about is like a tournament result. So we were able to foresee the Arclight Phoenix was going to be just a powerhouse of a card, and we're able to invest right then and there before the market understood how much value the Arclight Phoenix was going to hold, and able to get in on it then. To me, that's a lot different speculation than speculating on these massive what ifs. The bubble of the hobby market has continued to go crazy, that everyone and their dog gets the FOMO that they've seen Logan Paul or some other big YouTuber start to buy out all these products and say, I want a piece of that. That's what we saw with the stock market, this swing around, that everybody that didn't have a clue of what they were doing was just salivating with that FOMO, that they couldn't pass this one up, and it causes these bubbles, and it causes kind of a market response that isn't like a natural reaction of the supply and demand chain. And that is my argument that I'm having for Magic the Gathering. So let's go ahead and pull Core 2020 up again. This is kind of what I'm talking about. Core 2020 has skipped years within days of growth. So someone has obviously targeted Core 2020 at 135, maybe a group of people. There probably is some sort of Discord, or that I'm not a part of these things anymore. It's not worth my time to keep up with these cabals that like to corner markets and stuff like that. But it looks like the looking through distributor sales, as well as kind of the eBay histories and Amazon histories, someone has made their mark at 135. The problem is nothing really has changed between Core Set 2020 within like a week or 2 weeks. There hasn't been some breakout deck. There hasn't been any sort of supply chain with like actual singles of Core Set 2020. From going from $85 to $135 is one of those things that doesn't have the justification of doing so. So this 100% is a speculatory buyout based on the fact that they believe that Core Set 2020 will be, and this does come off Hype Man's latest video of like saying that Core Set 22, which is misguided by the way, and we'll prove it here in a second. You got to be careful with using like Dongler EV or other websites EV, because they are not 100% accurate on when they calculate in that EV, especially core sets with things like the Planeswalker cards or the intro pack cards that give a skew towards what's actually in the set. So I don't believe that Dongler does any sort of filtering with these particular sets. If you see that Core Set 2020 is worth so much, because if you actually go over to the set, there are a lot of commons and uncommons like the Twin Blade Paladin that aren't found in booster packs. There's a Woodland Mystic here too at $3.19. So a common at $3.19, that is going to add way more EV than this $20 rare, because it's trying to say that you have the exact same rate of pulling this Woodland Mystic as you do any other of these 17-cent commons. So what it's trying to do is it makes an average of the slot of commons that you're going to be able to get, and it factors in, look at all of these commons that you're going to start to see that are like a Rubblebot Recluse. This has no real world value. Good luck trying to sell this for $1.17 or this Distant Tome for $1.31. These are out of the Planeswalker decks. There probably isn't a lot of sellers out there that are actually listing these, and there probably isn't a lot of buyers that are actually buying these particular cards. They are kind of stagnant, not moving, but unfortunately they do have the effect of adding into this EV. So yes, Core 2020 I still do believe is a good box. I've talked about it on my videos before, that I think is a smart investment, that's a key word. It's a good investment for 2-3 years down the road, or something you're looking to actually make a profit or a healthy return going forward. But as far as like having a quick double up, or what these people are doing, buying in at this incredibly high price, I think is very, very misguided. So the only winning scenario that these people that are buying in on these prices is if the hobby market can continue to see the growth that it is seeing. Elsewise, if there's more products that come out that make Core Set 2020 look, worse. I mean, look at like other products that are coming out this year, like Time Spiral. Are people really wanting to buy a box of Core Set 2020 over a Time Spiral box? Or any of the other million products in Modern Horizon 2 that are coming out? They're going to hold vast more value, I think, even long term when you start to compare the sets together. And I just don't see this having like this huge demand that you can liquidate these type of things. That brings us to our next issue with these armchair speculators, is they do not know the headache that it is to actually move mass products of sealed product. There are a lot of expenses to storing it, to shipping it. There's a lot of fees involved. At the start of my, I guess, what we call business that I've been doing here, I didn't touch sealed product. I mean, it kind of used to be the big rift between me and Alpha Investments. Alpha Investments was all about the sealed, all about the sealed, all about the sealed, or reserve list. And I was all about making smart picks on singles. Back in the day when I was picking like Ink Moth Nexuses because of Modern, or like I said, the Arclight Phoenixes, I thought it was a lot easier to make a killing on that, find a buy list, don't get hit by fees and all this, shipping and whatnot, and come out on top, rather than the headache of trying to go the eBay route with the shippings fees, the eBay fees, and all the other transactional fees that go along with it. Not only now, let me tell you now, with running a Patreon, with doing orders, what a headache, what a full-time job it is to ship sealed product. And I think a lot of people don't know what they're getting into when they actually do speculate on these things. They think it's just something like the stock market that they can just liquidate. From a veteran, let me tell you, that's not how it works. Finding buyers, finding the right market, and not killing your own market price. So what happens if these Core Set 2020 people all decide that they need to liquidate their product at the same time? This can also cause a chain reaction. And that's not unheard of. We've seen that over and over in the history of Magic the Gathering. One that comes to mind is Khans of Tarkir. A few years back, when Khans of Tarkir was supposed to be all about the fetch, and it was going to be the next $300 box, and yada yada yada, and that it went up to $195 and slapped right back down to in the 140s. And the people that got in on the 125, 130, because when Hype Man really started talking about Khans of Tarkir, he was using the baseline of what he got in on. But by the time the videos came out, there was no Khans of Tarkir at that super low standard box price, and it was already at 125, 130. And a lot of people lost their shirts when they did invest in that Khans of Tarkir, and it snapped up. Maybe they were able to sell it back at that time period, and then it snapped back down, and they're stuck with these boxes that now are not profitable to move. I mean, maybe you could break even on them, but it was a much, much harder. In fact, there are videos of people then selling that product right back just to try to recoup cost. And those type of videos were kind of heartbreaking to me, because these were people that had no business trying to run the gauntlet of these sealed boxes that do have a lot of patience that is required, and a lot of knowledge of where, when, and how to sell these particular products. So that's just a big warning that I'm trying to tell my viewers, is to like this is Market Monday. This is something that I enjoy doing. I've made a lot of money over the years of doing this. And even if you aren't looking to make money, you can be like old school Kevin, who just wanted to pay for my Magic like habit. I didn't want to spend money on Magic, so I had to manage a collection properly and kind of trade and use the market indicators to my advantage, that I never had to pay for Magic. So this is, I don't know where I was going with that one, but the gist of it is that my viewers, I like to look for healthy investments and I would even like to, going back to the start of this discussion, I would like to make the argument that investors are good for any economy. They help stop the valleys and the hills. So in any sort of, like, if you look at it like stock prices, or you look at the price history of particular sets and cards, if you see massive valleys and hills, that usually is more indicative of speculators that are all panic selling at the same time, and buying, like FOMO buying at the same time. What investors do is they keep a steady kind of medium of a card. It shows the true supply and demand. What investors will allow, especially if they're on top of things, is they make sure that a card never goes too far low and kind of gets lost in the weeds. That's what ends up happening when you have something go down to nothing and have no sorts of value. It gets stuck in closets, it gets thrown away, and then the supply actually does become lacking. And then when that card does become have a demand for that card, then you can see that card shoot up in price. Investors keep that line stable. They make sure that when a card starts to go down in value, that they pick up all those copies and then slowly start to trickle those back into the market based upon the demand. And those are typically good for the market. Those are taking that burden of these highs and lows and making that profit by utilizing demand to their advantage. But it's not the same as like speculation, when you are going all in on a particular product or hoping that the FOMO reaches on. The main difference between investors and speculators, I feel that speculators prey more on speculators than they do on actually consumers. That they're trying to get early in on the speculation, then create that hype, create that bubble to where other people just have to get in. I mean, I feel terrible for the people that are going to buy in on some of these higher end products at like the sell price of where you want to be getting out on. And those are kind of the suckers that the speculators look for, is they get in on these super low price, then hype the crap out of a product, and then it sells and they're able to liquidate those products to the speculators. And that's something else that is very, very tempting with kind of speculation, is no one is as great of a buyer as a speculator. They usually are talk about people that are impatient. They need to buy now. They'll pay top dollar. They don't need to budget. They are looking this as an investment. So an investment is a lot more justification to then buy a particular thing rather than like, well, I wanted this, but it's $30, so I'll just wait till it gets reprinted or something. Nope, they want it now because they are like, oh, it's going to be worth $60, so I'm going to have to pay this premium. Yeah, I missed out on the $15 price, but I still want that value. So it's just a whole predatory process that I think is very parasitical for any sort of hobby or any sort of market that it enters into. So I want to make that distinction quite clear with what I'm going for. Yes, I do engage in speculating from time to time, but I'd like to think that it's on more sound levels than just like, hey, we have a lot of stimulus money. Oh, Magic Sealed price has gone up. Look at all these other prices. This one's going to follow suit. Let's just go with all these things without even, figuring out that how much of a set in 2020 got printed. I mean, this is still at the height of Magic. This is where they're pumping out product. It's still very surprising to me, like sets like War of the Spark or Dominaria or even Kaladesh were able to hit the levels they are with how recent they really are in the scope of things, with just tons and tons of supply out there. I mean, you should see a little bit of a connection between the sealed prices of booster boxes and the prices that are in it. So if you look at something like Kaladesh, it should be going up over time. Of course, there's reprints. But what you are seeing is Kaladesh has been very volatile. Booster boxes are worth like $300, but the value of the box, even with inventions, is still $90. It's pitiful, comparatively speaking, to the other sets out there. And it just really shows how much supply is out there as far as the cards are concerned. And I would even judge that there probably is quite a bit of supply in the fact of sealed boxes that are still out there. I mean, it's no Lorwyn. It hasn't been around for decades upon decades. And that's what I can say with any of these things with Return to Ravnica forward. You got to really be careful for these particular products, because we don't know when that market crash is going to come. And the indicators are there that Magic isn't doing as well as everyone suspects. We do have a lot of things going for it at the moment, which across the board, like, yeah, you can brag about the growth of Magic, but it wasn't just Magic. It was across the board with everything. We saw these record numbers for the hobby industry. That can't happen long term. We're going to go back to a world that is normal. We're going to go back to this pre-pandemic behaviors of where Magic is going to have to fight in tooth and nail against all its other competitors for views, for people playing their game, for all the things that they were suffering before. There's not going to be such liquid capital out there for people to invest in, hobbies where they can justify, oh, I'm not going to Hawaii this year, so I'm going to put it in Magic. I never had that, the money for it. Well, we had to cancel our family vacation. Sure, I'll buy a box to keep me entertained. All those things. I also think that a lot of people have gone into debt over these last little FOMOs, and that's also going to come back into the picture with then being able to liquidate, products to recoup some debt. So there's a lot of unknowns that I think are very, very scary and should get people's gears going, whether or not they want to engage in this FOMO. So I think at this point I'm just beating a dead horse with these sets, but across the board, it just doesn't make any sense when Amonkhet was stagnant for $85 booster boxes for way past this rotation, and then it goes from 85 to 120, and then the next big jump is 230. And the same thing can be said for, Hour Devastation had big jumps. We've had like Ixalan looks like it's going to have a big jump. Rivals of Ixalan looks like it's going to have another big jump. And I would not be surprised that after this next stimulus check is out, that we don't see one set that's rotated that is under 120. So I'm even looking at Guilds of Ravnica. So we even have War of the Spark that's already above 120. Ixalan's almost there. Dominaria, Amonkhet, Hour Devastation are insane. Kaladesh, Aether Revolt are insane. Shadows over Innistrad is now 150. Eldritch Moon is insane in price. Oath, Battle. I think it's funny because some of these down here are still below 120. Here I'll give everyone a little bit of a gist of what I do for my patrons. I show them the current box price that I can get it from various distributors. And this is kind of my sheet here that I updated. It probably needs to be updated again. But as far as under 120, now that we have, like Core 2020 now, I can't even get. So it probably is above that 120. I'm certain it is. We have Ravnica Allegiance, Guilds, Core 2019. And then really that's it. There's nothing else that's above. There's Gatecrash and Dragon's Maze. That's all the boxes that are under 120. Even go up under 150, a lot of these other ones are approaching, like Dragons Darkir, Journey above 150. And it's just a matter of time before I think that these are going to be very, very tough products to come by. The last thing that's very problematic about this whole FOMO speculating buying is it's going to give missed signals to companies like Wizards of the Coast that they actually need to step up their game and print more. I think that when companies print these particular collectibles, they don't want to necessarily run out of the availability of people never being able to find a Kaladesh pack. Probably Wizards of the Coast does, but they want to be able to sell. They want to milk as much of this life as they can. And so as longer they can keep distributor stock, the better. And so what that's going to show them is, hey, maybe we can actually overprint. I wish we would have created a warehouse and even overprinted Ixalan, because now distributors would still be wanting to buy Ixalan from us. So therefore, maybe we should change our printing practices to have even more stock. Set up a warehouse somewhere, set up a place where distributors can then buy at a higher price a year later after rotation or 2 years after rotation. And then that could really affect the market going forward, and overprinting in 2019, 2020, 2021 will look like child's play, comparatively speaking, to what they could get. And that isn't like a far-fetched scenario. That'd be huge profit margins for Wizards of the Coast. They spent let's say it costs them $50 to print a booster box, and then they sell it to distributors for $58. They make $8 per booster. I don't know what the margins are. We'll just say that. But what if they can increase those margins from then being able to sell it right to distributors for $100, and the distributors turn around and sell it to us for $120 if that supply is still there. And Wizards starts dictating this price based upon what they think the demand. They really start playing the eBay game and stuff like that. That wouldn't be too far fetched. If they were a smart company, they probably should try to internalize all of that rather than going through this distribution or letting the market take the lion's share of the profits when these bubbles do happen. But those are all things that typically do crash the market long term, because then you don't have the speculator money coming in, and it's like the emperor not wearing any clothes at that point. You see how weak the actual playing of Magic the Gathering is, comparatively speaking, to the people that are investing for those golden years of their product being worth something. We saw that with comic books. We saw that with Beanie Babies. We saw that with so many other collectibles in the not-so-recent past. So anyway, there we go. That is a long ramble about speculation. That's really all I have for you. I was going to show some other indications, but points to take away from this video. Be careful with this Dawnglare EV. There are a lot of things that shouldn't be in here that do end up getting factored in, especially these core sets or these later sets. So keep that in mind. I think that this one's a little overinflated. And you don't want to ever be this guy buying it at 135. You're going to be investing in these two particular sets. I think you invest at the bottoms where you could have a week ago or 2 weeks ago got in at 85, 90 bucks a booster box and called it good. Once the ship has sailed, let it sail. There's other products you can get in onto. This one is too far gone. Yeah, it can go up to 170. It can go up to 180. But I mean, there's a good saying in any sort of finances: always leave that last 20% to someone else. It's not worth your time. It's not worth the risk. What's the best case scenario for Corset 2020? Is it actually going to live up to that, or is it now going to stagnate at 135 for years and years and years because it's taken that 2-year growth and it's sandwiched it all within 10 minutes? So that's I don't know. That's what happens with these FOMO scenarios. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to be interested in the comments in the comment section below. I am going to do my best effort to revive the Rogue Market channel. So we're going to be looking at Time Spiral and seeing what opportunities there could be in Time Spiral. I do want to jump back into investing in singles. I think that once we have tournaments, actually paper tournaments going again, it's going to give a good market for those indicators of investing in particular cards before a tournament, and or things that seem to be undervalued that get reprinted. You're like, well, it's he's playing X, Y, and Z. It should go naturally bounce back up, and that's really what the Rogue Market used to focus on. Really enjoyed making those Rogue Market or Rogue Roundup videos, especially. But it's been so weird with no tournament play that the only investable cards recently have just been commander cards, which is enough of a market at this point to justify even doing those particular videos. And we hope you enjoyed this video. This has been Kevin with the Rogue Deck Builder. Thanks for watching.